Hi, I'm Jeanette Hansen, the Director of Mennonite Church Canada International Witness. It has certainly been a year to remember. While we are all part of this worldwide pandemic, many of our partners have also dealt with violent unrest and life-changing events. These last months have been especially heartbreaking as we have walked with our siblings in faith and ministry partners through difficult times. It has been incredibly moving to see their resilience and trust in God. Here are a few examples. The commitment within the multi-ethnic Mesrita Christos Church in Ethiopia to be a beacon on a hill among the violence erupting around them between those same ethnicities. The faithfulness of Christians in Myanmar, despite being a tiny minority often targeted by political leaders. The resilience of Colombian Mennonites putting their lives on the line for peace, again and again and again. The quiet confidence of Palestinian Christians in the face of injustice, preaching a gospel of peace. The strength of Chinese church leaders who say that all things work together for good, as they see enormous changes in the ways that they can be safely a church in their community. Although distanced in miles, we have used new and creative ways to keep connected to these partners. We've had Zoom calls between individuals and congregational representatives in Canada to church leaders, witness workers, and ministry partners in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. There has been increased involvement in witness support networks as Canadian believers hear the stories, meet the people, and participate in advocacy, prayer, fundraising, and discernment, all from the comfort of their own homes. Live and taped messages from international partners have been viewed in churches and homes during worship services and congregational meetings. Witness workers continue their ministries. With COVID lockdowns easing and a travel pass given to them by the Ministry of Agriculture, witness workers Dan and Joji Pantoja, Indigenous names Lakan and Lakambini, have continued to train and mentor coffee farmers and peace and reconciliation teams. After 30 years of service in Greater China, George and Tobia Veith, in consultation with Chinese colleagues, will return to Canada this summer. As witness workers Boki Kim and Sukyoung Park provide support for Mennonite Church South Korea, they're also developing community peace-building programs and publishing together with other peace writers and researchers. Tom and Christine Puvong celebrated a joyful Easter outdoor baptism service with 3 congregations witnessing together God's work in expanding the family. As Mennonite Church Canada lives into the new church structure, already 4 years old, we continue to struggle with the many implications of those changes. It is a subtle yet profound change. International Witness was a national program in which each regional church participated. Now, International Witness is a program of each regional church that is shared with the other regions. Where within these structures of each regional church is the ownership held? Depending on the region, this might be a task force, a committee, a commission, a department, a staff person. We can use these different structures and different gifts of the various regions to work together. There's a lot of potential for growth as we enrich our lives in service with one another. So this year, while you have been isolating to protect your families and neighbors, while borders have been closed, you, as Mennonite Church Canada, have been active around the world, shedding light on God's healing and hope, building peace and sharing the love of God alongside our global family of faith. Thank you for continuing to work together in this way.
Hi friends, it's Steve Heinrichs here, Director of Indigenous Settler Relations for Mennonite Church Canada. I'm in Unistoten territory, some 60 kilometers outside of Houston, BC, with a 5-person Christian Peacemaker Team MC Canada delegation. We are here in this beautiful place supporting the work of the Unistoten Healing Center and the courageous reoccupation of traditional lands by Wet'suwet'en people. We're learning a lot. And if you'd like to learn more, you can check out www.unastotencamp.ca. Well, today I'd like to share with you the 4 key mandates of our Mennonite Church Canada Indigenous Settler Relations Program, and one key highlight from this past year that illustrates those mandates in action. The 4 mandates are: 1, education and dialogue; 2, friendship and alliances; 3, peace and justice; 4, representation and committee participation. And these mandates and all our work are guided by 2 foundational documents: the Truth and Reconciliation's 94 Calls to Action and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. To nurture education and dialogue that centers the priorities of Indigenous peoples, we've organized 4 different book clubs, helping congregants and pastors engage everything from structural racism in Canada to decolonizing the Bible, to ecological justice and the defense of Indigenous lands. Our last book club explored a radical set of documents from the Catholic Church, which were co-created with Indigenous peoples. It's called Beloved Amazon. Through this study, we learned that for the Church, the defense of life, community, land, and Indigenous peoples' rights is an evangelical principle. Moreover, according to Beloved Amazonia, Indigenous territory, like this place that I'm in today, is, quote, not only a geographical space, but a place of meaning for faith and the experience of God in history, and a particular source of God's revelation. And so the defense of life is the defense of the territory. Peace and justice is central to healthy relationships. For the last 5 years, in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 43rd, 44th, and 48th calls to action, we have been raising awareness of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and advocating for federal legislation to help transform Canada's laws so that they respect the minimum human rights standards of the Declaration. Justice Murray Sinclair once said, "For generations, Canada has waged war against Indigenous peoples through law. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples won't undo the war of law, but it will begin to address that war's legacy." Currently, Bill C-15, the legislation to implement the declaration, is in the Senate. And spirit willing, this legislation will achieve royal assent and become law by June 23rd, before the Senate shuts down for the summer and we go through a likely fall election. Representation and committee participation is a big part of ISR's work. From collaborations with Christian peacemaker teams to the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, we are blessed to link arms with a wide diversity of communities who are seeking justice and right relations. And that includes our regional church Indigenous Relations and TRC groups in BC, Saskatchewan, and Eastern Canada. One of my favorite highlights comes from our MCEC Truth and Reconciliation Action Group. We were able to host a year-long webinar series on treaties and covenant relationships that received a wonderful response. Hundreds and hundreds came out. And alongside that rich awareness building, we also engaged a variety of actions to support 1492 Land Back Lane, an effort by the Haudenosaunee to reclaim and defend their lands. Education and action, words and deeds together. Now that's powerful stuff. To foster friendship and alliances, ISR has long supported and championed the brilliant community called NAITS, the North American Indigenous Institute for Theological Studies. Today, as I record this video, more than 30 friends and members of Mennonite Church Canada are zooming into NAIT's annual 3-day symposium, learning all about treaties and those covenants here in Canada and around the world that bind Indigenous and settler peoples together, not only as neighbors, but as family. And that brings me to my last word. I was asked to speak to one challenge or question for ISR going forward. And I think that the main or most significant challenge is how we mobilize our greatest gift that we have as a Mennonite community. And that's our people. how we mobilize into collective solidarity work that joyfully follows the priorities and leadership of Indigenous peoples. We have some amazing regional working groups that are doing significant work. The challenge for those working groups is to imagine themselves not first and foremost as education or even advocacy task forces or the group that is doing this work, but as prophetic organizing circles who are seeking to mobilize the larger regional church in risk-taking lives of reconciling friendship with Indigenous hosts. The church is mission, and the gospel is good news for the poor and oppressed. We need missionary disciples of decolonizing justice, and if we dream and plan and organize toward that vision, we can do it. And by God's grace, we will. Thank you so much, friends, for engaging this ISR update and report. I wish you God's blessing in all your work, and we'll see each other soon. Take care.
Welcome to the in-store setting of Common Word. Many of you know us perhaps from an email exchange, or internet search, or phone conversation, or virtual book launch, or off-site display, or home mail delivery. And perhaps you've also visited us in person here. With COVID realities, our in-store customer traffic, understandably, has quieted. But our online e-commerce service has nearly tripled, causing us to adjust to new customer circumstances. Although it remains challenging to anticipate what shape new post-COVID realities might take, there are reasons to be hopeful. We entered our new fiscal year several months ago, buoyed by the very encouraging results of a balanced financial statement. This is both humbling and gratifying, given the unpredictability of the past 15 months. I express my thanks to Common Word staff, who burdened temporary layoff, the adjustments of working from home, and the transitions related to greater online activity. Anita, who does our ordering and payment reconciliations. Anna Sarah, who does our web, phone, and email customer service and processes shipments. And Josh, who works part-time as our graphic designer. I'm also grateful to congregations and donors who have continued to support the work of Common Word. In addition, our current fiscal year's early financial results have been nothing short of remarkable and offer much hope for the coming months. We are tracking ahead of our record sales pace of 2 years ago. Online sales represent almost 40% of our retail revenue, well above the 14% Canadian average. Shipping demands have nearly tripled. Sale profits from general book sales in the first year's first quarter were up 54.2% from 2 years ago. Voices Together products, key titles like Healing Haunted Histories and Germinating Conversations, in addition to book launches like Growing a Generous Church, and regular Indigenous settler relations titles like Be It Resolved or Unsettling the Word, and niche books like The Vegan Kitchen and Herald Press releases have all contributed to this upturn. And our new website has been critical in helping make these results happen. Although individuals have not borrowed books in the same volume as prior to the pandemic, there are signs that circulation is rebounding. The number of borrowers in April, for instance, was up from 2 years ago, and the number of Mennonite Church Canada congregations who used our library services is about the same. Throughout these past months, we have continued to ship our loans free anywhere in Canada. Historically, we send over half our loan volume to destinations outside Manitoba, and we have a growing ecumenical base. As congregations increasingly find their footing and new rhythms, I expect our resourcing services will grow after the pandemic. COVID, of course, has accelerated our need to make more retail products available online. This trajectory will continue with attention given to specific topics based on what the church and university are engaging, like climate action, intercultural church, and Indigenous settler relations. We also are planning new in-store retail initiatives to replace our former 10,000 villages inventory. One promising direction is to engage local Indigenous artisans. This has received strong initial interest from an Indigenous advisory group. It is our hope that with Indigenous settler relations literature and possible in-store presentations or storytelling by artisans themselves, these crafts might enable small steps toward relationship and reconciliation that is in concert with CMU and Mennonite Church Canada's own initiatives. Our partnership with Together in Worship continues. We share a database of free Anabaptist digital worship materials collected from within our wider Mennonite Church family. We are in a third summer of university student curation and anticipate the addition of musical, visual, and textual worship resources. This work has been boosted by a significant Calvin Institute grant to help with the visual art curation. As I look forward toward the future of Anabaptist resourcing, the need for faith formation resources that shape our collective identity is greater than ever. We often say that Google can provide 1 million resources, but Common Word can help provide the right one. Curation, accessibility, collaboration, personal customer service will all be essential in an environment oversaturated with resources. With a flexible web platform, dedicated staff, and a strong commitment from CMU and Mennonite Church Canada, Common Word is well positioned to be an important resource partner and an aggregate source of well-chosen materials to buy, borrow, or access online. We look forward to the future God has in mind for the church. We look ahead to ways Common Word can best equip the church toward that future in and beyond the pandemic. And we look for God's continued presence in the discernment, the tasks, and the relationships that give us hope.